What's up, fight fans? This is Kurt DeVille with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Eddie Hearn. Get this. Eddie Hearn demands a statement, a KO statement from Anthony Joshua and Jake Paul. Eddie is pulling no punches ahead of the Joshua versus Paul fight. He believes AJ needs to make a statement. He says obviously he needs to go in and destroy him. Once AJ hits him on the chin, the fight's over. Hearn warns there's no room for slip-ups or mercy. The mismatch in experience and pedigree is too big, and one clean shot could end it early. Boxing fans, do you think Paul will finish him early? And let me counterpunch. You can look at this two ways, people. You could look at this in a way of, man, Eddie is like, yo, AJ, you can't lose again. You know, you can't lose again. You can't lose again. You can't, you can't afford to have what happened in Madison Square Garden. That cannot happen, you know? And if so, your career's over, you know? So it sounds like an ultimatum, but also you can look at it as Eddie's so confident that AJ will knock out Jake Paul that he's saying things like this. And to counterpunch, I think that's the case. I think that I do believe that he will be that person to knock out Jake Paul. I think Eddie is comfortable with making that fight, and because he's comfortable with making that fight, he's comfortable with AJ because he's that sure, he's that certain that AJ will do that. That's why he's talking like that. I don't think he would even come out and say anything like that if he was unsure. But I think if he was unsure, the fight wouldn't get made. Because I think the whole thing about this year was, Eddie, think about how apprehensive he was. He didn't know if AJ was going to fight at the end of the year. No, he's coming back in January. Yes, no, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. To the point you're like, okay, you're not really sure on Anthony Joshua because you haven't given him a definite date. You see what I mean? Maybe all that talk was because they were having conversations with Jake Paul, but understand, they weren't having those conversations that much because Jake Paul was supposed to fight Gervonta Tank Davis, right? And he recently pulled out and he's running from the law and all this stuff or whatever's going on with Tank right now. But you know, I think that Eddie didn't know. He wasn't sure that he was comfortable with putting Anthony Joshua back in there this year. That's why they've been stalling, because they want to find the right opponent. And I think this is the right opponent for AJ, someone safe enough so that he would get the win. I will say this, though. There is some truth between that. This could be career suicide for AJ if he loses this fight. If Jake will look good, AJ will look like a big fraud. So what people will do, half the people will say AJ's a fraud because people will not want to believe that Jake Paul has advanced to this degree to take on someone like Anthony Joshua. You know, they would just call it would be easier to call AJ a fraud, you know, than to give Jake Paul props. The rest of the people will say Jake Paul deserves the opportunity and he needs to be up there with the big boys. You know what I'm saying? And he has earned his right because he has done what people never thought he could do. Right. So, you know, I think that's half and half of what people and how people would think. Nonetheless, though, AJ will still be done. He will be finished. But you guys tell me what you think of Eddie Hearn demanding a KO statement of Anthony Joshua. No room for slip-ups. Of course, please subscribe, like, and share. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.